My brother and I will never be the same after a fake wedding. The author is mentioned in the description. My brother, who is 31, and I, who is 30, have always been as close as twins. Our closeness is the foundation of our family. One of the truly consistent relationships, obviously not in an unusual way when we fight, which is never a minor altercation. Because it is so unnatural for everyone, the entire family feels it and works to fix it. He gave me away during my wedding. I named a child after him. We have matching tattoos. We talk on the phone almost daily. He began planning his wedding. He asked me to be a groomsman, and his friend, who is about 35, would be his best man. Everyone thought this was odd because of his role in my wedding, and none of us had met his friend. I expressed how it hurt my feelings and was greeted with my wedding. It's not about you, okay? I'll do whatever you ask. Throughout the planning, he called me every day. We submitted ideas. I assisted in the production of goods. I did not mind. I made the decision early on to focus on making this day as memorable as possible for my brother, rather than on titles. He asked me to be the flower fairy because it was a gay, child-free wedding, and I agreed. During the process of choosing dress shoes, he and the best man would dismiss all of my suggestions. She would send very basic heels that cost around $100. Oh no, I told her I had a budget of $45 for shoes, particularly plain gold heels. The entire wedding party had a mean girl mentality. I felt it from the beginning. There was the wedding party, then me. I chalked it up to not knowing them well in person. Each of them lives in a different state than me. They even went so far as to say my favorite shoes were too slutty. They were the type of small heels that fit around your calf or ankle. After that, I begged to come as a guest so that I could wear whatever I wanted without feeling judged by the rest of the wedding party. My brother says, "No way. I cannot marry without you by my side." I arrive in the state where the wedding will occur. The first day I arrive, I discover that the best man had a bachelor party the night before. With the exception of me, the entire wedding party was present. I let it go and focused on the wedding and my role. So I put on some wings, danced down the aisle, and delivered my very first wedding speech. Everything goes well. The wedding was amazing. Until the drag show. Yes, they held a drag show at their wedding. During the show, one of the queens appears and basically announces that it was all a hoax because my brother and his partner had married 1 year prior. I asked the rest of the wedding party, did they know? They did. They were at the actual wedding. Everyone except me. I'm sitting there trying to process when my mother, who gave them $3,000 for the wedding because they needed it, storms up and asks if I knew. I told her no, and she immediately switched to being supportive of me because of how bad things were. It quote, not that they are already married. They can do whatever they want. I spent more than $4,000 on this wedding because I was coming from out of state. I needed to get a plane ticket. I paid for a week in an airport one night. The majority of the wedding party stayed at the house I rented because they had no other place to stay and did not offer to pay for anything. Dress for the wedding. The fairy's wings. I made it all by hand. I spent way too much time and money on this wedding. But then I begin to recall all of the lies. They married, and 3 days later, my brother was at my house while I gave birth to my last child because I always want him to be a part of my big moments. He held my newborn and said nothing, knowing he had just married. They gaslighted me, saying I was crazy, feeling left out, and that he couldn't get married unless I lied to my face every day for a year. Just everything. After realizing all of this, I attempted to leave without making any sense. His husband mockingly asked if I was angry. I told them I'd talk to them another day and they should have a good night. I was able to leave the wedding without anyone else realizing I was upset. Before I can leave, the happy couple leads me into a room. My brother is crying, saying he didn't mean to hurt me. I keep it together and say, "Enjoy our night and we'll talk another day." His husband responds, "Oh, there is something to talk about." Then I repeat, "We can talk another day." They invited me to brunch. I say, "I'll see if I'm up for it when they leave." The next morning, I realize the entire wedding party and a few guests are going to lunch. I chose not to go because I do not want to put myself in a situation where I will be ganged up on again for my feelings about the wedding and wedding party. After that, I left the wedding chat on Snapchat and they were notified. It's the next morning, and his husband begins blowing me and my friend up. We ignore it and go about our day. I have not looked at her or spoken with my brother since. Aside from the brief responses to get me to the airport the day I left. When I left, I requested that they remove me from the wedding photos because I did not want to be associated with a fake wedding and did not want to be reminded of how embarrassing and stupid I looked. I said I didn't want to speak with them again. My brother says nothing, and his husband says, "You're a narcissist, and I feel sorry for those who have to deal with you." I'm pretty sure narcissistic is more synonymous with tricking 100 people into attending a wedding. Some of the wedding expenses were paid for by others. Just to inform everyone. Ha ha, this was just a big party for us. The joke is on you, which is probably more narcissistic than my reaction to the time, money, and energy spent attending a fake wedding. But okay, LOL. I quote, am just not sure where to go from here. I have blocked them both. There's a line in our family. My brother hasn't attempted to fix it. He has the opportunity to show me what I meant to him. He did, and now I must believe him. I'm going to try to update in section 1 to see if he's in an abusive relationship. It is ultimately up to each individual to make that decision. I will not label him as abusive because I am not in a relationship with him. I mentioned the drag queens because they are part of the story, even though one of them made the announcement. I'm not sure why some of you interpret that as me being homophobic. Mentioning that someone is gay or that drag queens attended a wedding is part of a story, and it's true. It's not a phobia. Our family, as well as my new husband's, has always been extremely supportive and accepting. My mother has 2 children who are deeply hurt. She could never hate my brother, but she does not agree with the decisions he has made. She is doing her best to support her 2 children. A day wedding. There are no kids allowed. 2 separate statements, LOL. They did not exclude gay children from their wedding, LOL. I mention both of these details to explain why I was a flower fairy. The gay dragon theme does not include a flower girl fairy for children. Hello, everyone. I proudly put on those wings and dance my way down the aisle. That is not a phobia, LOL. For those of you who say anything along those lines, you are definitely reaching and projecting narcissistic, when it does not apply to the person who, in my opinion, is attempting to weaponize. Top questions. For some reason, I can't edit my post to include this, so hopefully most of you will see it. Become a new husband. So far as I know, I had no hard feelings heading into the wedding. I expressed this while they were dating. I didn't like the fact that my brother was working 2 jobs for a new husband while attempting to become a music producer. For years, I watched my brother commit suicide in order to provide for both of them while he sat around smoking marijuana in his studio. And ever since then, new husband has decided that I despise him, despite the fact that we have since resolved all of those issues when he got a job and began contributing. Even when we did not get along, I always made it clear that if my brother loves you, I love you, and both families have been extremely supportive. There is no homophobia on either side. Is my brother involved in an abusive relationship? I'm not sure. I guess it depends on what each person considers abusive. I don't want to unfairly label my brother's partner as abusive because I'm not in a relationship myself, and my brother has never expressed feelings of abuse. I believe it is up to you to decide whether you consider this behavior manipulative or abusive. However, I will not assign that label to anyone. I didn't realize this was a fake wedding. They did when they decided to announce in the middle of the ceremony that they had already married. They made it a fake wedding by announcing that it was fake LOL. Hello? 5 Russian bots spread propaganda. Okay, I only mentioned the drag show at the wedding because it is a very unusual occurrence. I discovered that my brother had been married for a year and had been lying to me through drag queen announcements. That is simply stating the facts. That has nothing to do with the drag community or how I or anyone else should feel about them. They were paid to do a job, so they showed up and did it. I have no ill will toward anyone in any kind of community. Those of you who claim that mentioning them comes across as judgmental are overreacting. For those of you who think it's strange that I didn't mention he was gay, why is that strange? And how does it relate to the story? LOL. The people who had their panties in a wad are probably more upset with the community than I am. Stop making this post about anything other than its topic at the end of the day. I am deeply saddened by my brother's death. I'm mourning the relationship that I thought he and I shared. To be honest, based on my perception of our closeness, I am seriously questioning my own sanity. Do you generally spend hours talking to someone and getting matching tattoos, planning a wedding, being at a holiday, and giving birth with someone you don't know well? At least on my end, I didn't pretend to be close to my brother if it wasn't reciprocated. And he is an excellent actor. And to be honest, questioning our closeness has been the most painful aspect of this entire experience. It has made me wonder if I'm crazy or not. Gay wedding. Child-free. Two different statements. It wasn't a wedding where no gay kids were invited, LOL. If you read it that way, you're extra weird. My brother is obviously gay and has married a man, so it's a gay wedding. Children were not permitted to attend the wedding so that a child could separate things from people. Both are okay. And I'd like to add that I would never have slapped fairy wings on my back and danced down the aisle unless I was completely supportive of them. Please stop making this about anything other than two siblings having a falling out. Another comment. Okay, I feel like you are really twisting the story, LOL. I did not notify everyone that I was leaving the wedding. I actually left quietly at almost midnight, just as the wedding was about to end at 1 a.m. I didn't make my brother cry. His now husband kept attempting to force a conversation that I politely requested not have the night of the wedding so that it would not ruin their day. I showed up and did everything my brother asked of me. I took the bullet, and it kept my mouth shut for the majority of it. After being accused of making the wedding about me, I went out of my way to make his day as special as possible. Comment on her husband. Rather, try to contact my husband and ask how I can repay what I spent to attend the wedding. My husband said he would not get involved. Brother tried to persuade my husband that I was exaggerating. My husband informed brother that this is not true, and I have every right to be upset. And what he did was ridiculous. My husband has been very supportive, but he is also very saddened to see me and my brother fighting like this. Update 1. I'm going to do my best to include as much information as possible, but it ends up being too long and Reddit won't let me post. So I'm going to try to answer all of the questions, and I'll paraphrase extensively. The update is, there is no update. Things are the same. They're still blocked. One suggestion was that I write him a letter, which I did the day after this incident and left in his room. I expressed all of my emotions and described in detail how hurt I was. We had a 2-hour drive, and he said nothing after reading my letter. I ended up losing all of my manners when I landed, and my husband informed me that he had sent him a message essentially saying that I was overreacting. I said a lot of things I'm not proud of. At the end of the day, I stand by my truth and my understanding of what occurred. Please do not try to make this a phobia issue. Both families have been completely supportive. They represent themselves, not a larger group of people. Stop being so simple-minded. The mention of drag queens was only there because one of the queens revealed that they had married a year prior. Plus, how frequently do you see a drag show at a wedding, if you read an imaginary undertone? That is undoubtedly a major issue. Moving on. The husband, in my opinion, is not abusive, though abusiveness is subjective. I believe this stems more from his emotional immaturity. I'm not a yes man. I was attending the wedding. That is an appropriate time to be a yes man. Aside from that, my new husband has always felt intimidated by my opinion. I believe he knows I can see through his BS. Weak men despised strong women. That is a fact. And that is the case here. However, we did not have any beef on the wedding day or for several years before I made it clear. If my brother loves you and wishes to spend his life with you, I support that. My mother is doing her best to be as supportive as she can to both of her children. She could never hate my brother, even though she despises everything he did. I'm not sure who I am without my brother. He was equally important to me as my children and my husband. It was always just me and him. To say I am in mourning is an understatement. This entire situation has caused me to question a 30-year relationship. Realizing his ability to live a double life in which I am not a part has shattered my entire world and sense of reality. I am not okay. I'm going to spend the next year without making contact. I'm going to therapy to get my mind, body, and soul in the best possible shape, while also spreading as much good karma as possible. Maybe I'll be able to decide whether I want to completely close that door or if I'm ready to create a new normal with him. At the end of the day, I am devastated and heartbroken. I'd also like to address frequently asked questions. One of the babies was number 5. There's no fear of being overshadowed. They married on a date that coincided with their dating anniversary. Nothing to do with my pregnancy. 2. I am aware that people marry and hold a large ceremony later. That is okay. This is not what they did. This is how they did it. 3. I am not a Russian bot trying to spread propaganda, lol. Those comments made me laugh, though. 4. If I knew why they felt comfortable doing this to me, I might not be as surprised as I am. I am not leaving out any details. To be honest, it would be much easier if I had done something horrible to deserve this, because I wouldn't have to wonder why. I know, at the end of the day, I'm not fine. I'm not sure what he could do to fix this. I'll always wonder if he's telling me the truth, or what he's hiding after the way his husband spoke to me and allowed him to do so. I'm honestly disgusted by both of them. I deleted the original post because I didn't want them to get attacked. Unfortunately, I still need to try to protect him. I don't know you. The brother-in-law appeared and commented on the original post. Brother-in-law here. I'll just start by saying that having a big wedding ceremony a year later was not my idea, but once we decided to do it, we talked a lot about telling people ahead of time for fear of something like this happening. I quote, "We never had a great relationship with Opus, but we've tried to make things work primarily for my husband, her brother, because I knew they were close. And while I wasn't particularly fond of her because of our previous interactions, I understand how important close relationships are and would never want to break them apart." Opus refused to talk about it. We tried to apologize and explain that the intention was never to humiliate or insult anyone, but she refused to talk about it, especially the night after at the Airbnb. I tried to start a conversation with Opus about how she was feeling, but she only responded with snark and comments about how there wasn't anything to discuss. That was the small conversation in which I said, "So there is something to talk about." I eventually let it go and left the room. Nothing she said helped me or anyone else understand how she truly felt about it, and what she did say seemed very self-centered, as if this was a plan to humiliate her specifically, which it most certainly was not. However, after reading through this, I can see why she felt the way she did, and for that, I truly apologize. Anyway, I'm not sure how these work or if there's a proper way to post this, but please ask me anything. Opus responded on Instagram, "All I'm going to say is that you're married now and have made your choice. You two are in a partnership. You both decided to do this and thought it was a good idea. And the result is that I want nothing to do with either of you ever again. That is it. There is no reason or purpose to continue having an open dialogue about this, because it has been resolved, and you starting your post with 'don't like me' pretty much confirmed everything I said. I wish you and him nothing but happiness, but this conversation has ended. I've heard your side of the story, and it still doesn't justify what you both did, and I've decided to walk away from both of you. I hope there is another response." In the text above, he admits that he knew. He literally says, "We didn't want to tell anyone because they were present and happy." He understood what he was doing. This was a massive manipulation. Lying to get what you want is manipulation, as is withholding information from people in order to deny them the ability to make an informed decision. They understood what they were doing. During the sentence, the other people stated that brother does not value sister in the same way. That is it. That concludes the argument. They both demonstrated precisely what I meant to them. The motivation behind it is no longer important. Perhaps this was a complete oversight and mistake, but the outcome was the same, and the consequences remain the same. I want nothing to do with you. I wish you happiness because I will always cherish it. If you make him happy, I am extremely happy for both of you. Truly I am. Our relationship was the sacrifice for today, and you both chose to make it. I reacted to it and tried to process my emotions by posting on this podcast. I didn't expect it to go viral, so I apologize. I attempted to remove the post, but it was too late. I understand that you dislike me due to previous interactions, and that's fine, so what I'm going to say won't matter. My heart is totally shattered. I'm literally in mourning as if someone died, because the relationship ended that night and I died. He's always been my person. He's in now, and I've never felt so alone. I'm honestly not sure if I'll be okay. Both of your responses simply confirm everything I said and felt. You have your point of view, and I have mine, but everyone is affected by my absence, which changes everything in the family. I will always root for you both, but in an emergency, I will do so from my side of the world. Either of you can call me, and I will be there. Aside from that, I'm fine with both of you. You do not like me? I've left your life. You don't get to defer to the end when it comes to me, but you want to plan our conversation after he did what he did. You are not a safe environment for me. I'm sure you don't think I am either. You win. Tell me within. Go live a happy life. Comment on the bill. I have a few questions. Why didn't your brother tell her you were married for a whole year? I managed to surprise the majority of the guests. However, it appears to be very mean towards his sister and mother. Why wasn't Opus allowed to leave the wedding party? Did you actually call her a narcissist? Hope, Bill. In hindsight, keeping it a secret was a bad decision, which I will admit openly. The rest of it is difficult because, while things were tense between us, I never wanted to exacerbate the situation. So, if I ever had to deal with Opus, I would always defer to her brother. Rereading all of this was the first time I'd heard about her wanting to leave the wedding party. So I have no idea. To be honest, I have ADHD, so I'm not very good at planning. And anyone who knows both of us knows that my brother is a planner. So I wasn't as involved in the wedding party planning process. I wish I had said it differently. But after she refused to talk to anyone for 2 days, and her brother drops her off at the airport, she decides to put us both in a text group chat and absolutely go TF off about how she can say her piece and stand by her truth, and she won't hear anything else from anyone else. I know it was mean, and I intended to convey that at the time. I wish I hadn't said this, but it's too late. About the surprise. Hindsight is 20/20ths. I was terrified of a major upset, and I'm pretty sure my brother was too. We discussed it, but it was one of those situations where someone texts you and you forget to respond, and then, after a while, it's just too awkward to say anything because it's been so long. Obviously, the magnitude of these events is vastly different, and I am aware of this. But once we decided we were going to do it, we stuck to our guns, and the time passed quickly. And before you know it, it's wedding week. People have arrived from out of town, and there is a lot to do. And by that point, we had considered telling only her and a few other key family members. But figures will. It's been so long, and instead of having a potentially disastrous blowout, the wedding may not even happen. Everyone appears to be happy right now, so we'll just wait and hope for the best, and then we'll be told we're dumb. Decisions have been made, which is unfortunate. That's the only mean thing I said to her all week, and it was after trying so hard to make things right, particularly with her and her brother, and receiving a cold shoulder followed by strange accusations. She can hate me, and that's okay. But brother does not deserve the venom that his post elicited, and I was hoping for a positive outcome. The section above was particularly my perspective at the time, given that I only had a small portion of her perspective to filter through all of the anger it contained. To be honest, I'm feeling slightly more sympathetic now. I still don't agree with everything, but I understand better now. And again, I apologize for how painful it was. I really wish things had been done differently. Sorry for the lengthy run-on sentence comment. So you're assigning the majority of the blame to your husband, OP's brother. Way to be a partner to your new husband. I have ADHD. How does this absolve you of being a person? The only truth I see here is that you didn't particularly like Opus due to previous interactions, Opus Bill. I am not blaming anyone. I'm simply stating what happened. ADHD does not absolve anything, nor was it intended to completely admit my part in the wrong. But I didn't plan anything like everyone thinks I did. We made a poor decision that caused pain, and I apologize for it. Truly. But I won't let 3,000 people accuse me of something I didn't do without at least attempting to clarify. From my perspective, there's a whole arc of shit between me and Opus from years ago that was completely ignored in all of her posts. And she is aware of the final comment from the bill. Well, I've said my piece, I have apologized. I tried to make things as smooth as I could. I have no bias towards anyone, and I never have. It wasn't meant to harm anyone, but it did. And that's terrible. Major booty. I did not orchestrate anything. This was not my idea. I said something mean. Finally, after being blasted in the texts, no one is perfect. You've formed an opinion about me based on one side of the story, which is fine. This is Reddit. At the end of the day, all of the people who have opinions on this and the comments were not present, and they had no knowledge of the individuals involved. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. AFA, I truly mean it. But yes, another member of the wedding party posts. I was at this wedding, but I was not a member of the wedding party. I agree that a lot of what happened with Opus on this is messed up, but I'm calling bullshit on some of what her brother's husband said, or at least the tone in which it was delivered or interpreted. Maybe that man is the most stand-up guy I know. When he became my boss more than a year ago, he quickly became one of my closest friends. I've seen him go above and beyond to help people he doesn't like. The only way I can see him doing these things is if Opus said something she didn't mention in the post. Second comma, I'm calling bullshit on the entire wedding party, because I wasn't at the lunch the next day, and only 2 of the 6 members were there. OP's brother's best man and another person were present. Everyone was supposed to go, but everyone had something else to do. There was a lot of stuff that needed to be driven around, and what happened with Opus was messed up from a technical standpoint as well. I heard it from her brother's husband, and I'm confident I know about 10% of what happened. But there are 2 sides to every story. In this case, her absence from their actual wedding makes more sense, given that she had recently moved to the East Coast and the wedding was on the West Coast. And, as previously stated, she gave birth 3 days later. If it had been my sister, she would have known and served as my best man at the wedding. But that is me. I wouldn't be surprised if some of this was exaggerated based on what I know, which isn't much to say. There are always 2 sides to a story, but let's remove the narrative and focus on the main issues. Opus spent a lot of time, effort, and money on the wedding, having been led to believe the entire time that it was a real wedding when the rest of the groom's people knew, except for her, that it wasn't. She was led to believe that she was one of the most important people there. She did what was asked of her by fairy dancing down the aisle, which not everyone would have the courage to do, only to be told later that it was all a lie in a humiliating way. Then I'd be devastated by what they did and how they did it. She probably feels very hurt and as if they took away her important role in the wedding in those few seconds. She then realized she was the only one who didn't know. Go off. Kick a fairy while she's down. It could have been much better thought out. I quote, I'll be honest. I'd feel like the butt of the joke and be extremely embarrassed. I believe most people would. We all make mistakes, and some damage control is undoubtedly required to rebuild bridges. I hope they work it out. I'm not sure what I would do without my brothers and sisters in my life. Comment 100%, and I agree with almost everything you said. My point is that she made at least 2 assumptions, one of which was about the lunch I was having. She assumed it was a big lunch for everyone except her. When that was not the case, it was just me and 3 other people. I decided where we would eat 5 minutes before we left. I did nothing more than attend the wedding and stay overnight because I drove 90 minutes there and the majority of the wedding party was not present at the lunch. In fact, the groom stated that they were not going because they wanted to talk and spend time with Opus. So, what other assumptions did she make? I know she assumed her brother's husband was up to something. It was entirely his idea. She mentioned it in the comments. That was not the case at all. Her brother came up with the idea of keeping it a secret. To reiterate, she is valid and feels the way she does about many of these issues. And once again, I know far less than she, her brother, or her brother's husband. But I'm willing to bet that if she and her brother talked about it, a lot of the confusion would be cleared up. What exactly did it mean in terms of her wounds? They should both be willing to do this. And I was surprised to hear that he didn't talk to her in the car. That is unfortunate. To be clear, I am not familiar with all of this. We shook hands and introduced ourselves at the start of the wedding. That is all I know about her. Clearly, I am biased because I know her brother's husband and her brother fairly well at this point. One final comment. While I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. As for me, I'm done with this shit show. Update 2. If you're reading this, you're probably interested in my family's TLOL. But really, I'm fine. I am going to be okay. Perhaps I won't. In any case, I will continue to move forward, and if you want to join me, you can do so by following me on TikTok. I quote, not trying to be an influencer. Instead, I'll use it as a diary. Coping is divided into safe spaces. TCare29 has new updates, and my name appears there. It's been 6 months. I wish I could write that. My brother begged for my forgiveness, hoping that things would return to normal, but they have not. Nothing about my situation has changed. The only thing they truly altered was my perception of someone I assumed I knew. I know many people don't understand because you don't have a close relationship with your siblings, but this has felt like a true death to me. And sometimes my grief is overwhelming. I'm not sure what to do with it. He has not reached out. He has not explained. He hasn't cared if I'm completely honest. And what a mindfuck it has been. To go from someone being as important to you as your husband and children to them repeatedly demonstrating how insignificant you are and have always been. He has reiterated that he did nothing wrong and that you are overreacting, which is the biggest slap in the face. If someone is unwilling to admit their mistakes, they will never be able to apologize, and the chances of the behavior repeating itself are extremely high. Many of you pointed out that our relationship was only this important to me, and I believe you were all correct. For a long time, I cried every day. I cried when we would usually talk on the phone or when a song reminded me of him. And I've cried for no apparent reason other than the fact that I feel like I have a hole in my heart. But I am crying less and less. And sometimes when I think of him, my first thought is, it's been days since I've even thought about him. And I suppose that is progress, right? I don't cry every day anymore. But I would be lying if I said I didn't quote still shedding tears. Tears he does not deserve. But they come anyway. Because that is the thing about unconditional love. It still exists even after the other person has broken your heart. It never goes away, but sometimes the other person simply loses access to the unconditional. We spoke briefly on the phone during the holidays to discuss a family emergency involving another family member. It was basically all business. Everyone around us was saying, "I'm glad you're talking again." But we didn't talk again. We were simply dealing with business. And I suppose that's the last time we'll talk. At one point, my husband joined in on our phone conversation and expressed how much he misses him. He cried. I guess I forgot that I wasn't the only one who lost someone, but that doesn't change anything. My children haven't even noticed. He did try to send Christmas gifts to them through my mother, but only after I complained about him failing to acknowledge my son's birthday. So, is this all he'll ever be? Impersonal, generic gifts that my children receive once a year? I told my mother to send them back, and that they didn't need a gift. Uncle, honestly, they have plenty of those on my husband's side, but I also realized that if you do not have a good, respectful relationship with me, you will not have access to my children. To be completely honest, he never showed much interest in my children anyway. I know he cares and loves them, but in terms of a personal one-on-one relationship, let's just say the extent of his knowledge of them was limited to what I told him about them. So he didn't have a deep, pre-established relationship with any of my children, and he was on bad terms with both me and my husband. I will not give him access to my children, and I would honestly feel the same way and react to anyone in this manner. If someone repeatedly demonstrates that they do not love and respect you, why would you give them access to your children, especially if they are only a gift once a year? I am not healed, but I am on my way. It quote s not perfect, but it's getting better. I believe I'm suffering the consequences of someone else's actions. I was spiraling, but I'm finding my new normal. I'll update again in a year.